Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is going to be the astro weather for the week of February the 15th through the 22nd, 2026. Arguably, at least in my opinion, one of the most important weeks all year long. So I'm going to break down all of the transits this week, talk about where the moon's moving through, and all the aspects that are kind of peppered in between. And obviously I'm going to be putting a highlight on some of the good news that Mercury trine Jupiter is going to be bringing us in the week ahead. Now, quick little love notes before we get going. First of all, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Be sure to click that bell button below so you can see more of my videos. I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Drop me a comment also below. Let me know how you're feeling and maybe some of the good news that you received this week and where you see some of the cosmic blessings that we're going to be getting from Jupiter. I do read all of them. I can't get back to everybody, but thank you guys. We've seen a lot of engagement in the channel recently, and everybody who's listening, whether it's on X, on YouTube, on Spotify, thank you guys so much for your support. This Friday, we're going to be live on the channel at 6 p.m. Central. That's 4 Pacific time, 7 Eastern, and we're going to be hanging out doing some live tarot readings. So if you guys want a reading, come and hang out, join me on the channel. You guys can always find the link posted in advance on the community tab. And while you're there, check out my memberships. Consider joining one of the levels to support me as a full-time content creator, or join level 4 if you want to be a part of getting a shout out. You guys are also going to be a part of my daily horoscope club, and you're going to get a reading once a month with me, tarot or astrology. Guys, this is the week. This is what I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks that was kind of building up. It's hard to pick one particular aspect, but throughout this next week, I will be talking a little bit more about like the Venus trine Jupiter. We're also going to talk a little bit of some of the effects that are going to be maybe kind of happening post the solar eclipse that we're having this week in Aquarius. And obviously, we are in Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. So just so you guys know, we're feeling the effects of that starting this week as well. Now, this week is going to feel like a kind of cosmic punch. We're getting blitzed with a bunch of things that are happening all at one time. So take a breather, take it easy, ground yourself. This week is all about kind of blending innovative breakthroughs, obviously a lot of emotional resets, and some really positive, dreamy expansion. Now we're dealing with a lot of Aquarian energy. Obviously we're pushing for new beginnings under that solar eclipse in Aquarius. And really, it's all about radical new beginnings. And some of those things may feel like there's some curveballs that are pushing us to orchestrate change this week with some of the Uranus squares. Now, we are going to see that we are shifting into Pisces season this week. The sun's going to enter into Pisces. This is going to be really kind of getting us more into the flow of things. And as you guys know, Pisces is the last sign of the Zodiac. So we're wrapping things up as we're preparing to kind of go into next month's brand new energy during Aries season. This is truly, truly when the year begins. But between eclipses this week and the beginning of March, a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, it almost feels like there is this delay of an ending that's taking place before we have this kind of brave new beginning. Now, as we watch the moon transiting this week, it's going to go from Aquarius into Pisces, then into Aries, and it's going to wrap up the week in Taurus. And I got to tell you guys, as we get to the weekend, things are actually going to be quite beautiful. We're going to see some really nice aspects with Venus trine Jupiter, moon obviously in Taurus. So you have something to look forward to as you're getting to like next Sunday. But this really talks a lot about emotional depth and intuition as we're coming out of some of those more kind of chaotic energies with the solar eclipse in Aquarius, which is all about detachment and innovation. And then we segue into Pisces, and that's going to be more about kind of our intuition, our dreams. As you guys know, now Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. They're no longer in Pisces. So we're not going to have this kind of the constant kind of confusion or that feeling of like lethargicness that we have seen recently. Now it's all get up and go energy, especially after the solar eclipse. As we see the moon go into Aries, I want you guys to pay close attention, because that is going to be the first time now that Saturn and Neptune are direct and they're in Aries to stay, that we're truly going to see this new beginning unfold. And we know that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening this week also, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we kind of wrap up the week with the moon going through Taurus, which is very grounded, stabilizing. It's also kind of more of a sensual vibe. So I'm really liking the tail end of the week, but we are just going to kind of feel like things are kind of coming from all different angles. So I'm telling you guys all of this just because of all of the transits that I'm going to be going through this week, and a lot of them are rather unusual to be happening in such a short period of time. Now on the 15th, we see the sun square Uranus, okay? So you guys are watching this on the 15th on Sunday, so happy Sunday to my Sunday crew. But the sun will go through Aquarius and it'll be kind of creating that hard square to Uranus and Taurus. So today is a kind of anything goes type of day. There can be some, shakeups with our routines, some shocks, surprises, and obviously some rebelliousness. And that's also baked into what you guys will see with the solar eclipse. Then we move on to the 16th, where we're going to see a nice aspect. Mercury is going to be forming a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. So that's going to be really beautiful. Good for communication, agreeing to things, getting documents done, getting anything kind of finished up prior to going into the Mercury retrograde at the end of this month. And it can also really make us more optimistic when it comes to communication and big ideas. Followed by February 17th, a solar eclipse in Aquarius. And this is a North Node eclipse. Even though the North Node has not moved in yet to the sign of Aquarius, that'll be later this summer, it's starting to pick up on some of the themes that are going to be unfolding for the better part of the next 2 years. Now that'll be at 28 degrees, and this is all about a reset for kind of like collective visions, personal innovation, our goal, and our communities. Then we will also see the same day Venus in conjunction to the North Node in Pisces, and this is really talking about fated events taking place with relationships, money, values, resources. And then the sun enters Pisces on the 18th, and we move into Pisces season, really kind of softening our focus when it comes to compassion, when it comes to creativity, and what we're kind of wrapping up, followed by February 20th, where we see the well-awaited Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries point, that cardinal point of the zodiac where everything is initiated. So it almost feels like there's this slingshot that's being pulled back this week, and we'll feel that pretty much through March with the retrograde. And we're kind of being pointed in a brand new direction, which everybody is going to start to kind of feel unfolding basically in end of March going into April of this year. Now this conjunction is a biggie. I've been talking about it for some time. I brought it up in my 2026 kind of overview for New Year's. I also put out a video this week on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. I encourage you guys to watch that if you haven't seen it. I don't go through the 12 signs. I do in my horoscopes and in other videos, but I really talk about how this is going to be impacting the world and why it's so significant, what you guys can do to kind of get in flow with this energy, because Aries is right now, what we're doing right now. Now, this is all about blending dreams with reality, but it's also Saturn teaching us that we really have to focus on practical manifestation of ideals. And then the week finishes off on the 22nd, where Venus moves into a trine with Jupiter in Cancer. So we see 2 trines to Jupiter this week, which is very fortuitous, especially we're looking at Jupiter in its exaltation in Cancer, expansion when it comes to emotions, intuition, roots, home, and family. Venus being in its exaltation in Pisces, which is very dreamy, whimsical, spiritual, and it is about really healing. It can also be about forgiveness and wrapping things up. So very harmonious abundance kind of going into the weekend. We see the good news, and then we start to see it really manifest. Thankfully, we have this, and this is the silver lining, amid some more challenging energies with the solar eclipse, the square to Uranus, and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So it never ceases to amaze me. Whenever we've got a really good transit going on, there's something else in the background that's kind of rumbling, but we have to balance kind of the good with the bad. But definitely watch for really positive things that can be happening in relationships and finances towards the end of the week. Now, I want to talk to you guys about the, obviously the trines between Mercury and Jupiter. And the good news is good news, right? Mercury and Jupiter, we're going to see it 3 separate times. So I really encourage you guys to really pay attention. I'm going to talk about the dates when this is going to be happening. And things are getting kicked off this week, both through the Mercury retrograde shadow, but also through the Mercury trine Jupiter that is echoing some of the unfoldment that will be happening this month and into March. But overall, I think this week, it's really expecting a lot of emotional highs, obviously intuitive insights. We can also see opportunities for growth as we push through some of these kind of foggy boundaries, and we're leaning into flow rather than forcing things. So much of Saturn and Neptune and Aries is about not having these knee-jerk reactions and not feeling like we need to be demanding or we need to do something right now, that we need to take the time to let certain situations unfold, get a clear vision, and really kind of collect ourselves before we decide how we are going to take action. So enjoy some of the trines and know that eclipse season really is like a portal of change. We see that doors open, doors close. Lots of dramatic kind of things happen under solar eclipses because they're more action-based. And when it's associated with the North Node, It's saying there are going to be things that are going to start rapidly progressing. That's showing us where we're going into the future. Now, more of that you'll see kind of unfold in July and August as the North Node's kind of getting into Aquarius. But we haven't been in these North Node eclipses in 18 to 19 years. So it's been quite some time since we've gone through this. If you guys haven't seen my solar eclipse video in Aquarius, I recommend checking it out. I do take it through the 12 signs and talk about what the effects are and how to kind of navigate maybe some of the challenges of that square to Uranus. So let's talk a little bit about Mercury in Pisces Trine, Jupiter in Cancer. All right, so as we know, Jupiter is retrograde right now. I just want to really reiterate that. Some of the goods aren't really going to start to come until the final trine, which we're going to see in a couple months' time. But as for who this is going to be impacting the most right off the bat, Gemini and Virgo, okay, because you guys are ruled by Mercury. So this is really highlighting on your role specifically when it comes to communications and all that stuff and some of the good news or the expansion that can happen. Also Cancer, because you're going to see Mercury trining Jupiter in your sign, as well as Sagittarius and Pisces risings, because you guys are ruled by Jupiter. So you'll want to watch some of the trines that are going to be playing out. And for all of you guys, it's really activating communication, expansion, good luck. Anything when it deals with emotions and intuition, you're going to be feeling this very strongly. Now in astrology, when we see a trine, this is considered to be the energy of Jupiter, right? The great benefic, makes everything bigger, it expands things, so it touches on anything connected to joy, abundance, good luck, travel, expansion. And this is a water trine, so it's going to be a little bit more emotional rather than kind of action-packed for most people. And the trine in astrology is a 120-degree aspect. So it's kind of like it's like a cosmic high five between the planets. Like it's really them kind of being in flow and being able to expand certain aspects of the chart. So it creates this effortless flow where it's really blending energies smoothly, and it's doing that without tension. So we could see emotional tensions ease. We could see that travel can be easier to navigate. It can be easier to kind of get in touch with our intuition. And it can also bring really positive communication related things. So we'll find that it manifests with a trine as like natural talent, maybe some lucky breaks this week or some supportive vibes that make things feel easier. And I think that's really, really, really what all of us need. It's really, I think, going to be some serendipitous moments as well, where kind of we see that there is like this synergy between the two planets where opportunities align and we don't really have to push too much. Now, the key here is that you have to kind of lean into the emotional side because it's happening in Cancer and in Pisces. Now, in mundane astrology, when we see Mercury-Jupiter aspects like this, like a positive aspect, like a sextile or a trine, it really signifies that there's going to be positive developments in communication, right? It could be trade, it could be business, it could also be education, it could be media, and they can bring optimistic news and also diplomatic kind of breakthroughs or potentially expansion in global connectivity. So it's really about fostering more generosity and having more broad-minded kind of policies and cultural exchanges that can really uplift society. Jupiter is known for laws, and he's also dealing with international travel or trade. Mercury can be dealing with media, communications, contracts, announcements, and Mercury is in shadow this week, so I just want to really reiterate, guys, some of the things are going to be kind of starting to kind of drip. You know, some information is going to start to drip about what is changing with the direction of global policies, global trade, global relations, and how that's going to be impacting people here at home. Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer. So regardless of what country you live in, it's really trying to rework through Jupiter's retrograde. How can we support citizens? How can we help people afford housing? How can we create better laws? And I think it's actually going to be quite positive. As we look at Jupiter, you know, Jupiter is retrograde in Cancer, and it'll be retrograde till about the beginning of March. In fact, right around the time that you guys are seeing the third Mercury-Jupiter trine, both Jupiter and Mercury will be direct. So something is being worked on behind the scenes that's actually going to be quite positive here in a few short weeks. Now, Jupiter in Cancer being retrograde, it means it's turning expansion inward. So it's focusing on emotional security, family roots, and kind of nurturing that inner intuition, inner abundance. So it represents a time for reflecting maybe on our home life, maybe our ancestral patterns, and also building emotional resilience through revisiting past expansions around belonging. It can also be reevaluating what it means to feel safe, feel protected, and also this intuitive growth that kind of comes from refining what truly feels abundant to us the most. Now, Mercury in Pisces, as we know, not the easiest placement. Obviously, you know, Mercury's going to do some of its best work when it's in Virgo or when it's in Gemini because it's more cerebral. But I like Mercury in Pisces because it gives us the opportunity, because it's mutable, to say, can we change our mind? And, you know, is there another way? What do we have to release? And we kind of navigate things a little bit more intuitively. So Mercury in Pisces brings this more poetic, intuitive kind of communication style. And sometimes it's less about facts. It's more, you know, less about facts and logic, and it's going to be more about empathy and also anything connected to imagination, art, music, healing. So it represents dreamy thinking, artistic expression, and kind of absorbing moods, kind of like a sponge. So this can sometimes often lead to us being a little bit more compassionate in our conversations, but sometimes we don't always see the details. And obviously, because Mercury's going to retrograde, we're going to see where there's been some things that have been unclear or not defined or have been falsely represented, and perhaps where we have been a little too overly idealistic when it comes to our perception. And certainly idealism is very much connected to Jupiter. So we see that, you know, Mercury and Venus are now moving through a Jupiter sign, Pisces. Water sign themes you're going to see is not so much action. Okay, if you guys are like, when are we going to see action? You're going to see action the end of March going into April. So you're not going to see it yet. We do have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries this week, but it's at 0 degrees, which means it's just getting started. After that, we're going to see Mars going into Pisces pretty soon. So some of the actions are still being done kind of in the ethers, or it's something that we're still kind of planning. So once again, pace yourselves for us to kind of work out all of the kinks the next month or so as we go through these eclipses and retrogrades. But water trines emphasize emotional harmony. So other than intuition, I find that it's really about fluid creativity. So we can see that, yes, we have deeper empathy, but we can also heal connections that we have with other people. We can find that there is more effortless kind of like emotional flow. So we can be more compassionate, artistic, inspired, and also really focus on spiritual bonds. The only thing that we want to watch for is oversensitivity or escapism in the mix. That can definitely be a theme when we're kind of dealing with Pisces elements. Now we're going to see the trine taking place at 15 degrees. So if we think about degree theory, 15 degrees deals with a Gemini degree, okay? So it's going to take on some of the Gemini themes, which 3, 15, and 27 are always Gemini degrees. And the degree theory says for these degrees, it's about writing, putting your pen or pencil to paper. It's about notebooks, stationery paper, or sheets, traffic, streets, cars, transportation, trips, crossroads, bus stops, bridges, mechanics, newspaper, journalists, magazines, newsstands, or bookstores, conversation, communication, telephone, internet, letters, stamps, post office, mutual understanding, educated people, intellectuals, writers, or to learn. It's also about shop assistants, stores, commerce, and merchants, announcers in radio or TV, corridors, staircases, balconies, fences, gates, and a hall, neighbors or neighborhoods, personal documents like identity card, passport, driver's license, visa. I want to put a pin in that. To be a matchmaker, to get in touch through someone, languages, to translate or interpret, children, kindergarten, elementary school, double, two, or a couple, nicknames, twins, or brothers and sisters. So there's a few things off this list off the bat. I'm just kind of like without getting too much into it, but like Pisces is photography, right? So it's about pictures and images and things that deal with lighting and kind of perception. So obviously we're going to see Mercury going retrograde through there. So I think there's going to be more kind of communication about, well, you know, who's taking our pictures, right? And whether that's biometrics when we're trying to get on Reddit, whether that is biometrics when you're trying to travel internationally, whether it's going to be things that are connected to this major fallout over Life Touch, where we're finding all kinds of connections through the literal company that's taking photos of children in public schools. And who has access to that, who sees that. Some of the push now that they're seeing, they're doing this in Australia, where they're now starting to talk about doing some dry runs where they're testing out digital birth certificates for children in hospitals. All of these things that we're seeing in Pisces is stuff that we don't have all the facts, we're not sure, we're hearing bits and pieces of it, it's being kind of tried, but it's not really getting out to all of us yet collectively. And we'll see through the retrograde, it's gonna be confusing, but Pisces has always taught me that whatever is going on in other places or whatever is going on kind of globally or things that are a little bit more conspiracy-esque, generally have a way of unfolding when we get into Aries season and we start to realize that that can actually impact and affect us personally and like our role in it. So I'm just speculating that the Mercury retrograde and some of the stuff, because Mercury will retrograde over this degree, it'll go from about 22 all the way to I think about 8 degrees, will connect the dots here. So we're going to hear more about some of this stuff and if it's going to be kind of working and maybe going mainstream or if it's going to be kind of falling apart. But I had to share that with you. I also think that anything that deals with like language and things that are maybe translated could be a theme, especially on videos. I definitely think that this can also be kind of connected to just changes in the direction of where the media is going with certain stories about missing people, people who have passed, all of that stuff. I saw your guys' comments in on my videos over the last week where I was talking about the Mercury retrograde and how it starts at an 8. I guess there was, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Little John. Somebody said Little John's son, unfortunately, was found deceased. I think they said that he may have like drowned near a body of water. Also, I talked about Venus going through here and that Venus would meet with Mercury and that we might hear about a prominent woman who either goes missing or something connected to a journalist. Ding, we've been hearing about that pretty much for like the last almost like what, 2 weeks? So these degrees, like the degree theory is so real. So that's why I use it, because it can really talk about exactly what's going to manifest and be happening. So there's a lot of connection to this. But I think that that 15 degrees also really emphasizes just adaptability, duality, 2 sides of a story, 2 different perspectives. So it's going to amplify some of the more kind of versatile, kind of quick exchanges that we have. And it makes it an aspect that is ideal for networking. It's great for learning. It's great for multitasking. Ideas that make us a little bit more curious and clever. So it can be a wonderful time for us to be writing, right? So if you're in journalism, if you just want to be journaling, if you're somebody who's in media, you create content, Pisces can be videos and things like that. And I think we're going to see a lot of like artistic stuff that's going to be happening where people are communicating or speaking over like visual images and things that change. Maybe some big news that's connected to movie studios. That's Pisces. I could also see things that are connected to healthcare. Been kind of following some stuff with that globally, not just here in the United States, but things that are kind of connected to Canada, where they're talking about some of their, I think it's called the MAID program. Not a fan. And if you don't know what that is, I would say just go and look into it. But now they're talking about bringing this in and offering this to babies who are born who are basically, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like they're born with health issues or they're maybe born with disabilities. They've offered this program to the homeless. They've offered this program to people who are dealing with mental health issues. Now they're offering it to parents whose babies may be born with disabilities or they are born with disabilities because they figure that it's the ethical right thing to do so they're not in pain. But to me, personally, that doesn't sit right. I hear so many stories of like family and friends and people who have had kids and they're like, they were told, your kid's gonna be born with this issue, with that issue, they're born completely fine. Or babies that are born in NICU and they may be there for several weeks, but they come through and they end up living. Deeply, deeply disturbing stuff that's starting to come out of Canada. And I don't think that this is the only country that's kind of practicing some of this stuff. So I'm wondering if that's also gonna be part of what's going on with the Mercury retrograde, getting some of this stuff out there and making people realize that there are some major atrocities that are kind of happening within the medical system. Hopefully it continues to get exposed. Now for the Sabian symbols, because they're actually going to be trining exactly at about 15 degrees. So I take that back. So we're looking at 15 degrees. So 15 degrees is the Gemini degree. So it's going to be trining at 15 degrees. So we're going to read 16 degrees of these Sabian symbols. Because we're going to see both Mercury and Jupiter at those 2. And I'm going to start with the Cancer. So this is going to be where Mercury is. And Cancer 16 degrees is a man before a square with a manuscript scroll before him. Okay. And the theme is bringing things up to standard. The symbol speaks to intellectual experience as a challenge to self-competency and to attempt to improve things, or what is square with what could be. The image of a man in a square with a manuscript scroll suggests an editorial revision. The square is a measure, standard, pattern, or model, and the inference here is that life is a continuing process of trying to bring all things into conformity with their ideal or highest potential. The implications in that is that individuals need to frequently examine their ideas and beliefs and opinions and make adjustments whenever they discover that their subjective perceptions are out of sync with objective reality. The emphasis is on structure, logic, and objectivity. The highest, this symbol represents extraordinary organizational and analytical skills, reasoned judgment, and self-discipline. Watch for rigid thinking and lack of imagination or the inability to think creatively and recognize the potential. The accent is on logic, system and structure, comparisons, judgment, evaluations are emphasized. You may find yourself put to the test or trying to answer a question. Are you who you say you are? Your greatest advantage lies in making your behavior square with your ideals. Guard against expecting others to measure up to your standards or demanding a perfection that is unrealistic to the circumstance. Stepping stones are knowledge, education, intelligence, wisdom, conformity, squaring to standard, compliance, comparison, analysis, judgment, logic, and structure. So when I think about that, I think it's kind of more symbolizing orientation and consolidation, using Pisces ancient wisdom to kind of navigate life's patterns and embracing all facets for kind of self-wholeness. Versus the Pisces 16, so that means that they're in flow, okay? So the willingness to kind of reevaluate ourselves and figure out what we need to kind of reassess or change. Pisces 16 says a flow of inspiration, creative solutions. The symbol speaks to practical application of spiritual power. The image of flow and inspiration alludes to divine outpouring of creative energy that can be used for everyday problem solving. But the greater implication is that inspiration can be found everywhere by the individual who has trained himself to be sensitive to the illuminated potential waiting to be discovered in everything that exists. The suggestion here is that every challenge is an opportunity for stretching the imagination and developing resourcefulness. At its highest, it represents inventiveness, originality, and a special gift for seeing unique possibilities in the most unpromising things or situations. Watch for self-deception or a tendency to live in a fool's paradise and the preference for taking the easy way out. The accent is on inventiveness. You may be struck by a novel idea that helps you solve a problem or inspires you to try something new. Your greatest advantage lies in creating enough time and space in your life to get in touch with your higher self. Use your imagination and listen to your intuition. Guard against falling victim to delusion or thinking is the same as doing. Put your ideas to work in practical everyday ways. Creativity, so stepping stones is creativity, spiritual power, simulation, encouragement, imagination, inventiveness, originality, resourcefulness, idea, talent, brilliance, cleverness, vision, insight, intuition, foresight. So I like this. I feel like it's invoking this sense of like a spiritual influx. And it's talking about that in those quiet moments that we find Pisces, that there can be some profound ideas within the subconscious or the unconscious. And that could be Pisces or Cancer. It could be either one. But the trine is really saying we have to get in touch with the soul to reflect on emotions, and through the retrograde that's coming in, realize that there are some things we've been thinking about, but we have not been doing. Now is the age of doing, and you guys are going to see this. Saturn and Neptune are a little stunned right now. So there is this sense of them being like, I know what I need to do, but how do I do it? And like kind of feeling like we're scrambling. But people are going to start realizing that I think if they're taking small steps, they're going to be able to actually accomplish big things. We just have to wait until Saturn and Neptune are getting out of this 0 degree. I think applying these two planets and their Sabian symbols to the trine is really highlighting like the more harmonious blend of the introspective wisdom, Cancer, and the intuitive creativity of Pisces. So that trine will more or less kind of like facilitate, in a way, seamless flow where emotional inspiration is meeting communication. So we get the idea and we're able to kind of relay that and communicate that. So it's encouraging us to draw from some of the inner depths, maybe our intuitive insights, and focus on expansion and focus on healing and expression that feels more divinely guided. Once again, great time for meditation, great time for kind of reflecting alone, being by water, being in water, and where we can have, I think, this sense of awareness and that stream of consciousness, so that way we can better connect and communicate, not just with ourselves, but with other people. So whether that's like the angelic kind of realms, or communicating in spirit guides, or having clear dreams, or just being able to connect and communicate and express our emotions with some of our friends and also our families. Now, since Mercury is cruising through Pisces, something else that I think is worthy of mentioning is that because this is a sign that's traditionally associated with Jupiter, and we're seeing both Venus and Mercury trine Jupiter this week, this is going to make some of the trines a lot more potent. And that's because Jupiter is the dispositor of both of these planets. But right now we're talking about Mercury. So when we talk about Jupiter being the dispositor of Mercury, Jupiter is acting as, kind of being the gracious host, right? And he's inviting Mercury over for a seamless kind of supportive chat. And so this setup is going to really amplify the harmony of the trine, making the flow even more potent and even more natural. Now, this enhances, I think, the theme of kind of intuitive wisdom and spiritual intelligence and spiritual expansion. And we're going to see more of Jupiter's kind of like benevolent nature that's going to be coming in, that's guiding Mercury's dreamy communication style. So practically, this could manifest as, I think, like an easier access to bigger picture insights, spiritual downloads, compassionate conversations, things that are going to start feeling like synchronicities that are kind of divinely timed. Especially for those of you guys who have really strong water sign placements. So if you have anything 14, 15, 16 degrees, obviously of Cancer or of Scorpio or Pisces, you're going to be feeling this the strongest. And it's almost like the universe is stacking the deck in the favor, of those of you guys who can tap into this for empathic growth. And I think a lot of really amazing lucky breakthroughs. Now, Mercury is also the ruler and the dispositor of the South Node. So it's interesting to see Mercury, as it's connected to the South Node in Virgo, letting go of bad jobs, letting go of bad habits, making changes with our work or our schedule. It can also be things that are kind of changing in terms of how we are approaching health from a more emotional standpoint. On the natal North Node, or I guess the transiting North Node, is an interesting kind of blend of the past and the future. And so we're going to see Mercury go retrograde, through Pisces. So there's a lot of having to kind of clear up the past before we move forward, unveiling some of the things that have been hidden. And then we're going to see also that, Mercury is going to be in conjunction with the North Node, which we've seen this last week. And then Venus is coming through there. So, I look at this and I go, well, it's all kind of interconnected. There is a very fascinating kind of karmic vibe that's going on with some of these aspects. With the North Node in Pisces, the ruler is Jupiter. And so the South Node in Virgo, the ruler is Mercury. So as we see this trine come in, where there's an aspect between the North Node ruler, future, and South Node ruler, past, it's almost like Mercury is governing the South Node, and it's representing these past patterns of analysis, detail orientation, and service that we are now releasing. With Jupiter connected to the North Node and it's trining, it means it's pointing to our growth path forward. And the growth path is going to be about faith, service, spirituality, intuition, and compassion. So that trine creates this beautiful bridge, I think, between letting go and stepping forward. And it'll ease actually some of the tension, and we can kind of more or less evolve. So it's like a cosmic permission slip, right? To be able to integrate old skills through South Node Virgo, Virgo's precision especially, with a new soul mission, North Node in Pisces, empathy, without the usual friction that we see. And I think it also smooths over some of Mercury's kind of challenges here that we traditionally see in this sign. Now, globally, I think that we're going to see this kind of show up as smoother transitions in collective healing, major educational shifts. And personally, I think it's going to be more about opportunities to release overthinking and embrace trust. And this is also leading to fated expansion in creativity, spirituality, and relationships. If your nodes are activated here, so if you have a North or South Node in Pisces or Virgo, I would say pay extra close attention, because this week may actually feel like a pivotal turning point for destiny and alignment related progress. Now, the fun thing is that because Mercury will turn retrograde at the end of February, we're going to see this trine 3 times. All right. And so I'm of the frame of mind that there's a process. When we see a retrograde, clearly we have to go and kind of like mentally clear out the fridge, or we have to kind of go back to old projects, or we have to reassess things, we have to renegotiate, or we have to decide what's not working. So regardless of where Pisces is in your chart, Pisces is the end. And so I really just want to reiterate that there's a lot of endings that kind of come through some of these transits. Now on this week, we're going to see it, and then we're going to see it come back on March the 8th. And I want to show that to you guys because on March the 8th, when we see the 3rd trine, so let's go forward. When we see, we see the 2nd trine between Mercury and Jupiter. What do you guys observe about this? Mercury is retrograde, Jupiter is retrograde. Okay, so it's almost like there's a little glimmer of an idea or a dream or a hunch about something that we start tapping into. And then as we get into March, it comes back up again. But as you guys know, Mercury retrograde is not the best time to be like, yes, I'm starting the new newsletter, I'm launching the website, I'm signing the contract, I'm booking the travel. It can actually reiterate that some of us are starting to kind of feel like, okay, it's a good time to do these things soon. Let me kind of play it by ear and see what happens in early March and figure out what I need to do to get things in order so I can really have this kind of expansion or this launch that I want to have. Without that being said, the first trine that we're going to have this week is still very positive because Mercury is still direct. That's why I would say a lot of you guys who want to get your Mercury retrograde stuff done early, work with the trine. It's going to be a great communication day. But what you may find is because Mercury's in shadow, that you're still working out the kinks of something clear into March next month. Now, Jupiter and Mercury are both retrograde. So this is intensifying introspection, slowdown, reassessment. So this can mean there is a slowdown of what? International travel, things that deal with travel by water, things that are dealing with hospitals, things that are connected to prisons. Maybe there is going to be a major shift where a lot of people are going to be feeling a little bit more hermity and they're kind of noticing, oh my gosh, Mercury retrograde, crazy dreams, right, in Pisces. And the collective consciousness is starting to rise, which is going to make a lot of people's dreams kind of wild. And a lot of people are going to be feeling that kind of Piscean, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But when that happens and it starts trining Jupiter, it's still a great communication period. It's just not a time to move forward. It's time to reassess. So we're going to revisit ideas for like deeper kind of emotional refinement, potentially resolving, unresolved family, karma, or maybe if there is, surfacing kind of information or news or media or documents, big things are going to start to kind of be released. And P.S., global, guys, think globally. Stop thinking about what's happening just in your life or what's happening in your city or even your country. Think globally, because this is going to be impacting things that have been going on behind closed doors and where it's happening across the globe. And I think a lot of it's going to be how we're seeing that there is been this move for many years to infiltrate countries and change their rules of law. Jupiter, especially when it comes to Jupiter and Cancer things. Reproduction, reproductive rights, women, children, housing, anything that also deals with security. So I think we're going to be kind of seeing that there's a lot of things that are kind of coming up that we're like, has this been working? Obviously, at least in my opinion, the Saturn-Neptune kind of transits in Pisces has been suicidal empathy. We're so empathic, so giving. We know no bounds. We just give. And we try to merge everybody and kind of bring them together that we start to lose our identity. We start to feel crazy, or we start to kind of feel like we're just giving to the point where we have nothing to give left, and the impacts that it has on us emotionally, but also how that's impacting our communities, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. So we're going to start to see here that globally, there's going to be a lot of, well, we're rethinking immigration, and you will see across the globe, because Aries and Neptune, Saturn and Neptune and Aries is going to be a me first mentality. And at first, there's going to be a lot of condemning certain countries for doing some of these things. So when you see prime ministers across the globe, presidents, when you see leaders basically saying, we're now, going to be deporting people from our countries because it's destabilizing our population, that's a lot of this. They're going to be changing the rules of law. And then you'll see other countries that are going to go, well, we're actually opening our doors and we're saying that if people are trying to kind of flee or they're seeking asylum, they can come to our country. So you're going to see a flip-flop basically happening through the retrogrades. This one's a little tricky because I think that on one hand, it's still positive communication, good that we're getting the news out, but we have to revisit some of these ideas for deeper kind of emotional refinement. This is also about things that are now resurfacing that we have already intuitively felt were going to happen, but now we're starting to kind of make sense of all the documents, the information, the data dumps, the things that are finally starting to kind of get out. And this is the beginning of the end as you start to see these aspects. So it's going to be colorful. I mean, usually Pisces can also bring scandals that deal with organized religion, churches, temples, that kind of stuff. That's not unusual. Mercury also deals with journalists. So I think a lot of this is going to be about journalists and things kind of connected to journalism, that they're uncovering the past or family history. They're doing a deep dive on family bloodlines. And obviously the Mercury trine Jupiter also makes me think about like the connection that's kind of going on with like that missing woman and the journalist and like what's being found within her family. If it's a connection to one of the family members, which we know there is, we know that the daughter, her husband, has a pretty direct connection to some of the world scandals that are going on right now. And I think that's part of what may come up, but not a lot of people necessarily know that. Now, on April 2nd, which take out your marker, circle that day. That's going to be the very important day to watch. If you're somebody who's like me and you're like, no, I want to wait for the best aspect. I want to wait for the day that is going to be the best day to launch the business, send the newsletter, launch the website, sign the contract. This is the day. And that's because at this point, we are now going to see Jupiter is direct at 15 degrees, Gemini degree. And we're going to see Mercury is direct at 15 degrees. So this is the third trine. So there will be 3 cycles of, what is the decision? What is the law? What is the good news? What is coming? And people are going to be like, don't worry, clarity's coming, clarity's coming. There's going to be some good news. And I think it's actually going to come in. And of course, that's going to be happening on the day of a full moon in Libra. So it's going to be good news about justice, I would hope. I love the Venus that's in Taurus. I think that's great for that full moon. Not a fan of the square to Pluto. I think that we're going to start to see that justice is now starting to be served, but it's going to come at some pretty significant financial cost. And that's both in our lives, personally, within relationships, but also kind of collectively as well. And then after that, we're going to see in mid-April, Mars goes into Aries, and all of the things that you guys are hearing that are either conspiracies or the things that you are seeing play out in other countries, and you're saying, that'll never happen here, right? That'll never happen here. Suddenly you're going to realize, oh shit, it's happening here. Or there is more involvement with some of the people in my country than I thought. And I feel a personal responsibility and obligation to talk about these things because I feel like, number one, not a lot of other people are doing it. And I think it's primarily because their practice of astrology does not align with their political or ethical kind of beliefs, which I think is crazy. I also think that it's a personal obligation for me to talk about this stuff because what Saturn and Neptune is really talking about in Aries is about people having their own sense of identity and not really giving a fuck about who they piss off in the process. On top of that, we're looking for people who are willing to stick their neck out and basically be like, hi, I feel crazy, this is wrong, nobody's talking about this. And it's going to take some time for the collective to kind of get into the swing of this. And I know I'm a little bit ahead of it, but it's important as an American who still has the right at this point to be able to say these things. Where I know there are people in the UK that cannot say these things. I know there are people in Canada who cannot say these things. I know there are people in Australia who cannot say these things. I can continue to go on and on. But when I'm seeing journalists and I'm seeing independent media and I'm seeing people who are posting and talking about these things, that they're not okay with genocide, they're not okay with women who are their friends or family or people in their communities who are being sexually assaulted, and then having a cop show up to their door. If somebody doesn't say something, that's how we get ourselves in this situation. Go and watch my Saturn Neptune in Aries video. I talk a lot about this stuff and I talk a lot about my concerns for the future. And although it sounds grim, as we get into the future, this is going to be, I think, the important one. This is the day that the really good news starts to kind of arrive. So both of them are going to direct. So this is the final pass, right? So whatever we've been working through, literally this week until April, then it's we start to kind of get the awareness and the understanding of all of the kind of communications and news about the laws and the documents and all that stuff is going to start to become a little bit more clear. Now we have forward momentum. So in order to have that Jupiter freedom, emotional freedom, we need to wait until Mercury kind of does his thing. So it's going to manifest now as these refined ideas, now that the retrograde is over, that's in more tangible form. Okay, so it's going to bring more abundance. It's going to bring optimism. It's going to make things kind of flow more freely for positive outcomes. And I think not just communication and growth, but I look at Jupiter in Cancer and it's the safety and the security of our home, right? Our family, our mothers, our daughters, and anything that kind of deals with protecting that security. Quite a wild full moon. I haven't really looked at this yet, but obviously the square to Jupiter is also really enhancing that. That's really saying, you know what, we have to be really focusing on investing and involving ourselves in Taurus things, stability, security, resources, being a little bit more focused on things that can be more conservative just in their nature, Taurus, and some of the changes that are going to happen in relationships and the impact that that's going to have on family. And so I have thought for a very long time, it's not necessarily the names that you see that are the Epsteins or even the Bill Gates. There's a whole family, a list of families who most people, they don't even know their names. And this 13 or so list of families, these bloodlines are people who have been basically ruling the world for a very, very long time. I think we're going to start to hear about how that has been kind of impacting and influencing like global decisions when it comes to like politics and governance and things like that. So we'll see how it manifests around that full moon, but woo, quite the full moon. All right, so how to navigate the aspect of Mercury that's going to be coming into a square. So let me bring you guys back here to February 15th. There we go. How do you navigate the Mercury-Jupiter trine? Okay, so what you want to watch for is you want to navigate by really trusting your intuition over logic. That's what I think. Journaling dreams, intuitive hits, meditating, discussing big visions, and doing that with trusted friends. Watch for over optimism, because it could happen, because there could be a lot of getting overly optimistic about being able to do something, and then we have to kind of go back and make some corrections or kind of adjust things a little bit. And it can also lead to kind of scattered plans. So we have to kind of ground out with emotional check-ins. And we also want to avoid escapism, because honestly, with all these planets in Pisces, there can be a tendency to kind of lose the script or drop the plot and not recognize and realize that, you know, a lot of what our intuition, our emotions are kind of telling us, it can feel overwhelming. You know, I personally believe like the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is raising all of our vibrations, and like there are select people obviously here who can handle it, but there's also a lot of people who aren't used to some of those vibrations and frequencies, and so we can kind of see people acting kind of crazy, right? We can definitely see that. Mercury in Pisces is very much about that mental side of the information that we hear. So it could be dreams, it could be visions, it could be voices. And Jupiter in Cancer, you know, retrograde is like, oh my God, you know, I would say this to my family, but they would think I'm crazy. Or I'd talk to my, you know, best friend about this, but they wouldn't understand. And I think that if we can really focus on grounding and having these emotional check-ins and avoiding escapism, drinking, oversleeping, you know, binge watching Netflix, drugging, all that stuff, we can actually tap into the trine a little bit more intuitively, and we can find that it's helping us kind of be more compassionate and also kind of start getting ready to kind of take action. I've got Mercury in Scorpio. It trines my Jupiter in Cancer, and I find that, yeah, it makes me talk a lot for sure, but I think that it's also been really helpful for my work, because when I'm working, it's like when I have a feeling of something and I'm tapping into something, I'm like, no, this is what I need to be talking to my client about, or this is obviously something that's really sensitive, but it's something that needs to be said. And I've also been noticing, I don't know if you guys have been noticing, and I feel crazy even saying this, but and throughout my life, because I'm clairsentient, so I kind of like download information. So sometimes I'll be in a session and I'll be like, who's this person? And I'll be asking them about, you know, some person's name that kind of comes up, and they're like, oh my God, that's like my brother. I'll be like, what happened on this date? You know, and they're like, oh, that's when, you know, I quit my job. Anyway, I download information, and I've noticed that I have like a pitch. There's like a frequency that I hear. And most of the time it happens when I'm working. But over the last week, it's been like me with a dog whistle. Like, you know how dogs can hear dog whistles, but generally we can't hear it, that really high frequency. Almost every day, several times a day, I'm like, what is going on? Like I hear like the ringing, and like, I'm not crazy. I'm totally sane for the most part. And I had my hearing checked and everything, but I'm noticing that the frequencies are picking up. There is something that's going on. And I have a feeling it has something to do with this Pisces stuff, because this is all about what's going on in the etheric realms, you know, above us, around us, things we cannot see, before it becomes visible, before it rises and becomes aware of us and it's in our face. I wonder if anybody else is hearing that. I wonder if anybody else is picking up on it. For some people, I've heard other people saying, well, it's not quite like a high pitch, but they just notice that there is a shift in their frequency, and they start looking around like they're hearing something. I've also been hearing people that have been talking about that they're seeing like little flashes, or they're feeling like they're seeing stuff in the peripherals of their kind of like their vision. And I've been seeing that as well. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's like the Pisces gremlins, you know, like the Mercury retrograde video that I did, where there's strange synchronicities and things that kind of start happening. So watch for that. I think we're going to see some definite upticks in terms of what we're hearing. And obviously I think a lot of that's connected to kind of Venus being in Pisces as well, that we're just kind of picking up on stuff. I do think the positive in all of this is that globally, we're going to see that there's going to be a lot of uplifting news in renegotiations when it comes to diplomacy. So we're going to hear certain nations that are going to be wanting to go back into having regular communication, trade, working with other nations. I think we're also going to see major changes when it comes to healthcare reforms, education reforms, you know, cultural exchanges, possible breakthroughs in regards to water-related issues. So it can be environmental policies. It can be also things that have been conspiracy that are starting to kind of come out. So if you guys aren't aware of this, Mr. Bill Gates has moved on to some new areas of investment. Now he's highly, highly interested in water facilities, water treatment facilities, anything that deals with, treating water or putting things in water. So that's like a very Saturn-Neptune thing. So I think it's going to be about us being more aware of where's our water coming from, what is in our water, our water is being tested. We may hear throughout this process of the Mercury retrograde that there's some damning information that comes up about what's in our water, what's in our homes, what we're consuming. Could it be that there is a rollback of decisions regarding water? And whether that's, things that are connected to fluoride or other treatments, and also other pharmaceutical related things, because that can be Pisces as well. Watch for family-focused legislation, things that are going to be helping people afford homes, things that are going to be maybe even benefiting people, who are expanding their home, expanding their family, moving to certain places. You might see that certain countries are going to be like, yeah, you move here, we'll give you this, that kind of stuff. And obviously lots of media stories that are really emphasizing empathy and also global healing. Personally, you have to look at where this is in your chart. I will take you guys through the 12 rising signs and talk about where the Mercury, Jupiter kind of trine is happening. But keep in mind, it's going to take a couple months to kind of see this unfold. But I do think it's going to boost a lot of emotional intelligence. I think that's what I really like about having Mercury in a water sign and the trine to Jupiter, is that through that connection, through that flow, we can really share very eloquently. We can connect other people. We can teach other people about being compassionate. We can foster deeper bonds and relationships, and obviously be a little bit more creative, and also have some lucky breaks when it comes to learning, writing, or traveling. Now, watch for the enhancement in empathy, but keep in mind that the retrograde is kind of looming. So it's saying that this may blur boundaries, and there can be, in some ways where we're realizing we're saying too much, we're giving too much, we're not opening up enough. In other ways, it's about kind of realizing that we're doing that, kind of opening the door to more heartfelt kind of connections and communications, and just things in general that are going to, kind of heal the soul. So we'll see what happens. Definitely let me know some of your guys' good news that kind of comes with the Mercury-Jupiter trine. All right, so if you guys are watching, this is Sunday, February 15th. How was your Valentine's Day? Did you guys enjoy it? What did you guys do? Happy Sunday to everybody who's watching, my Sunday crew. Thanks for taking me with you. I always get a kick out of reading your guys' comments and your emails. I have gotten a ton of emails. I'm still getting back to people. So if you're one of those people who emailed me, thank you. But I got dozens of emails this week after my last video. So just want to thank you guys for supporting my channel and for watching, sharing, and all that stuff. Sunday, we wake up with quite a Hades moon. So take a breather, especially if you're waking up earlier in the morning. We wake up to the moon in Aquarius, and it's coming into conjunction with Pluto in Aquarius. And we're going to see the moon continue to move through the sign of Aquarius. And we're also going to start seeing that it's early morning before it even conjuncts Pluto. It's still kind of sextiling Saturn and Neptune, but that's going to be happening before most people are going to be awake. And that's really the only moon aspect that we're going to be seeing all day. However, this Sunday, we are going to be feeling the effects of the dark moon. So the moon's already in Aquarius, which means it's already preparing. It's kind of waning and coming into what's going to be the solar eclipse that we're going to see on the 17th. We're grumpy when this is happening, right? People are a little irritated, and that's because things are getting kind of flushed out and they're getting cleared out. And Aquarius deals with the internet, the future. It's about technology. It's things that's connected to communities. It's networks. It's also things that are connected to, politicians, Congress, Senate, anything like that, and just groups of people. So the Moon-Pluto conjunction I find very interesting, because it's kind of saying that there may be some kind of exposure and things that are kind of getting shaken out here. And obviously Moon-Pluto makes us feel like emotionally we need to purge. This is now picking up the energy of not just Uranus, where, surprise, today the sun is coming into a square, but it's also picking up the energy of Saturn, because that's the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and we've got Saturn conjunct Neptune. So, I mean, just scrolling through social media, just kind of seeing how many individuals are like, do I feel crazy? Why isn't nobody talking about this? Or why is this going on? Or why isn't anybody doing anything? Well, we gotta get Saturn and Neptune, out of 0 degrees. But the collective calling for, hi, there's, some shit that's hitting the fan is definitely pretty high on Sunday. For you, though, the moon conjunct Pluto, look at where Aquarius is in your chart. It just represents there's this final purge, right? There's this final clearing out before we come into this solar eclipse, and it can be bringing up some shadowy things. And then we are also going to see today that the sun is going to come into a square with Uranus and Taurus at none other than a Gemini degree. So there's a lot of Gemini degree energy that kind of gets kicked up this week. Communication, information, media, that kind of stuff. So you're not going to see that square happening until the evening hours. So it'll be kind of happening late in the evening, but it don't matter. We're going to feel the square basically all day. So if you are 26, 27, 28 degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you're feeling the effects of this square. And usually when we see the sun square Uranus, this is a superior square, by the way. So it means that the people are speaking out against, or they're taking action against, or people are becoming very kind of inflamed, because Mars is there, with something has to change, right? And so Uranus and Taurus is really about the reluctance, the resilience, the unwillingness to change things with food, with money, with values. Aquarius is notorious for people who are a little bit more liberal, and obviously Taurus is about things that are a little bit more conservative. So we do see that there is like this extreme push for, where people are wanting to go into the future and all the crazy things that we need to change, but needing to change things too quickly. That's where we have to be very careful, because I think that there can be a tendency for there to be so much pushback against stuff that people are going to have to start voting with their dollars. That's why you're seeing, at least on X and stuff, you're seeing some people that are like, we just need to completely, quit and protest for a week. When people don't buy things, people don't go to work, people aren't paying their taxes, people aren't, showing up and doing the things that are expected to do, then the system breaks down. And I'm not advocating for that, but it makes sense that I'm kind of seeing this at a Gemini degree where people are calling for that, because it would severely kind of like deregulate the system. Now, obviously, when the sun comes into a square with Uranus, and then we've also got the dark moon phase that's kind of happening, it basically means that this is the shakedown. This is the shakedown now that begins to happen before we come into the eclipse. It feels like, to me, like this electric tension. And it starts with the moon conjunct Pluto. Here's the crisis, sun comes into square with Uranus. Okay, this is going to be like the detour that we're taking, or here's the sudden pivot. And really, this is about innovative detachment and also clashes with surprises. So it's going to stir up for a lot of people feeling restless. We're going to see a lot of craziness going on with leaders. There's going to be some power shifts happening. And then we also start to see that, obviously early in the day with that moon sextile Saturn and Neptune, it can also mean that people are collectively feeling like they need to get involved. They need to do something. But the dark moon is saying it's not yet, it's not the time yet, it's a little introspective, it's a little shadowy, like wait for some of the other events to kind of manifest. I think to really navigate, Sunday the 15th, this is really going to be for a lot of us about embracing the curveballs, embracing things that are kind of unexpected and changes, and see them as breakthroughs. I've seen a lot of doom and gloom people kind of talking about the state of the world and what's kind of happening and how could this be happening to us and what are we going to do? And honestly, I'm at a point where I tune that out, because that's not my reality. And that's not what I choose to focus on. What I choose to focus on is, if you look at this from the perspective of a building, if the frame of the entire house is rotten, why would you just throw up some new windows and slap some paint on it and call it a day and just patch some stuff? Because the house is still going to rot, right? It's still going to fall apart. So why not just take a bulldozer through the whole thing, completely dig everything out and lay the foundation and do what you need to do to rebuild it and do it the right way? Yes, it's annoying, right? Because that means we have to do something. It's expensive. It also means that it's going to take time, and we're not going to have that immediate gratification. Change is not easy. Change comes from complete disruption of old, outdated systems. So when I look at this, it's about people wanting financial, physical, and also environmental change. When I say environmental, I don't necessarily mean the environment, although LOL with all the stuff that's going on with the rollbacks this week, where they're just completely killing anything that's been connected to some of the Green Deal ideas over the last several years. Start-stop vehicles are ending. We're moving back to fossil fuels. We're seeing a major segue into talking about nuclear energy and all kinds of other things, because if we don't have those things, we die, right? We die. And certainly I'm all for saving the environment and doing what we can do, but the information and the science and the statistics are coming out actually talking about the amount of damage to the environment, the things that we can't recycle, the animals that are being killed, and the instability of continuing energy that's coming from some of these green ideas are just not they're not going to work. They're not going to work. So we're starting to see now there is a pivot where people are now being told, oh yeah, we've been telling you, buy the electric vehicles, you know, you're going to have the charging bases. It would take trillions of dollars to have enough charging bases for everybody to have electric vehicles. And now they're telling people that they're going back to having cheaper cars, better cars, things that are going to be running on gas. And oh yeah, all those things that you've been buying that saves electricity, that burns out, and then you have to buy a new one. We're not doing that anymore. So this shock to consumers right now is going to be huge for people who have been buying the newest things that are supposed to be good for the environment or energy saving. They're about to realize like that's not the direction that we're going in. And I think that it's scary now, and like, yes, it's going to take some time to adapt, but I think that actually prices will come down. I think things are actually going to be a lot more affordable. Now we're going to also see that with some of these unexpected changes with the Sun square Uranus, and keep in mind Uranus is the dispositor of the Sun, right? So Venus is coming into conjunction with the North Node, where it's like, yeah, certain things have to kind of come to an end, and certain things that we have been valuing or kind of focusing on, maybe we have to be willing to kind of take the sacrifice. I've been one of those people who's been like, if everything is going to come crashing down, including the stock market, if we find out the truth of who's been running the world, like maybe we should just burn it all down. And maybe that sounds like super irresponsible, but I kind of feel like if there were to be, like, put yourself in this situation, if your son or your daughter or your sister were to come to you and say, hey, this situation happened to me, I was abused in some way, you know, I'm hurt, I was scared, I couldn't tell anybody, and your response or your husband's response to them was, yeah, but the stock market, how is that any different than what people are saying to us right now? And I think to some extent it's like manipulation. They're saying this because they want to scare people, because they're like, oh, we don't want to crash the stock market. We don't want to impact what's going on with housing. And, you know, obviously it's midterms that's happening this year. So you've got a lot of politics that are politicking, but you can't stop this train. And that's part of what's coming in with the solar eclipse that's going to be squaring Uranus as well. So I think that for a lot of us, we're really going to start to see that the positive is that even though things feel very destabilizing right now and the future does not feel certain, y'all have to be excited, because you're for sure going to be entertained, and it's definitely going to be something that is going to kind of clear things out. I would really encourage you guys to expect the unexpected today. I think that if you can ground yourself and kind of stabilize through Uranus and Taurus, get outside, go for a walk, have a grounding meal, spend some time in nature, things will actually be okay. But realize that this is a period where we are flushing things out. Avoid any rigid plans. Try to keep today flexible. So you may have plans, they may not go according to plan, but there may be some kind of shift. And try to kind of just be in flow with some of the revelations that are kind of coming up. All right, so you're going to see the square that's going to be coming in the late night hours. So it's going to happen at 20 and 31 minutes. So it's around 11 p.m. Central Time. I'm here in Texas. So if you're up late, watch for that square. And that's going to then take us into the 16th, which is going to be Monday morning. Now we're still in the dark moon phase. Moon's at 16. And we are going to be seeing that the moon is going to be in conjunction to Mars. All right, so that's a lot. Moon-Mars conjunction can mean people are a little heated, or people can be kind of a little bit more agitated, or they can be a little bit more in a hurry or pressing. And so this is the last aspect that the moon is going to be making. I guess I take it back. This is one of the last aspects. It's going to conjunct Mars, and then it's going to square Uranus. But there's this sense of impatience. There's this sense of it's got to happen now. You got to get this out now. And Mars is the dispositor of Saturn and Neptune now. So I do think a lot of this on Tuesday is going to be about things that are going on with Congress, and a lot of arguments and conflicts over, you know, debates and things, or how Congress is handling things. I guess I understand that they're like away or something over the weekend, or they're going to Europe and they're not staying put and doing what they should be doing, which is kind of getting the show on the road with passing some of these things they should be passing, and also continuing some of these investigations. But Moon is being influenced by Jupiter. So that means that there's going to be a lot of kind of conversations on the internet where people are reflecting on the rule of law, or what's going on in their homeland, and like why people are going and like fraternizing with like other people in other countries. I also think this is a time where people are going to speed, they're going to get angry, they're going to get kind of combative. So watch for these things. Now the moon will conjunct Mars, it looks like right around midday, 12 noon Central Time. And then after that, you're going to start seeing the moon coming into a sextile with Chiron in Aries. And that'll happen in the evening hours when it hits 23. And then you're also going to see that the moon will then come into a square with Uranus on the 17th. So that's the next day right before the eclipse. So let me go back. So we pretty much end the 16th with that moon sextile to Chiron. The positive thing that's happening, even in spite of some of this energy, is that we do see this is when Mercury at 15 degrees is going to be in a trine to Jupiter. Now, if I want to get exact with it, it looks like it's 15:52. So you're going to see that right around like the 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time hour. And that's when you're going to see Mercury, the mind, connecting with Jupiter, the great benefic. So this is the first phase of the good communication day. So pull out your red marker. Guys, I want you guys to kind of circle the 16th in the afternoon. You have to have a meeting, a phone call. You got to sign something. You got to send something in the mail. If you decide that you want to sit down and get some writing done, if there is a sense of you wanting to work on a website, send out a newsletter, good time to do it, right? Especially before the Mercury retrograde that's going to happen later in the month. So this is a good aspect. And I think like the moon coming into conjunction with Mars is people being like, I have to do it now. And I think that this is about the process of intuitively tapping into what am I going to be doing and really meditating on maybe some of the intentions that are going to be coming up under the solar eclipse. This is not the time to launch new things. If you absolutely have to do something, you can, but I'm not a fan of doing it under the eclipses, and I'm not a fan of doing it under Sun square Uranus. So I feel like this is just more about maybe just feeling more tapped in. So this is the first Mercury in Pisces trine Jupiter in Cancer. I think that on, basically all day on Monday, the vibes feel very dynamic. There is going to be surges with that moon conjunct Mars, feeling bold ideas and activism in Aquarius. Sextile to Chiron is going to bring the opportunity to kind of heal old wounds and anything that deals with action. And then the trine between Mercury and Jupiter is going to bring intuitive kind of communications and also potentially some synchronicities that we kind of like. I think that the day really talks about just intuitively tapping in and feeling like it's expansive and healing. And you're like, even though there's chaos out there, like I feel like there's something good that's going to come of this. And I feel like everything's getting cleared out for a reason. So I recommend for you guys to really work with the energy on Monday to just channel your passion into something that's creative. Communicate some of your big ideas, do some journaling, but watch for the impulsivity because the sun is still in a square to Uranus. We're still coming into the solar eclipse. Use empathy on this day to mend bridges. I love that about Mercury trine Jupiter. I think that can be a great way to heal, especially if you have some disconnection with family or you have some disconnection with a coworker, or if you're just trying to maybe incorporate mindfulness techniques into your physical health routine. So that can be making you kind of feel better. And we will see that trine happen around the 3 p.m. And then we're going to see as the night goes on, the moon overnight hours into the 17th, which will be Tuesday, is going to form a square to Uranus and Taurus. Okay, so basically what this means is that this is the last aspect right before we get into the solar eclipse. So depending on where you are in the world, I would say we can definitely start to see some of the rumblings, very, very, very early of what's coming from the eclipse on Tuesday morning. Now that eclipse won't be until it's at 28 degrees. So it looks like it's going to be around 6 a.m. Central Time on the 17th. So this is Tuesday. And every time people are like, it's the eclipse, I'm doing this. And I'm like, no, no, wait until the moon moves out of Aquarius. Wait until you start seeing the moon coming into connection with Venus in the North Node, which is going to be about a day. That's when I'm doing my stuff. That's when I recommend other people do their stuff because eclipses are like wild card energies. We don't know what's going to happen. The things that I like to do during eclipses is I like to fast. I like to sit and meditate. I'll burn some incense. I'll do some chants and stuff or sound bowl stuff in my office space just to clear the energies and light a candle. That's it. Because I know that something is still coming in. Now, you guys don't have to do that, but I'm going to tell you, be careful what you're manifesting under this eclipse because you might think you're going to go one way and it's going to go another way. So it happens very early in the morning. So if you're up and about, you're doing things 5, 6, 7, 8 a.m. Central Time, know that is when the eclipse is going to be taking place. Some of you guys might be asleep, but this is a solar eclipse, okay? So it's picking up on the energy of where that North Node in Aquarius is going, where collectively there's going to be some big changes. Notoriously, the North Node in Aquarius, just what I've seen throughout the last 100 years, is correlated with the bottoms of markets, okay? It's just a thing. Now, the North Node's not there yet. Ironically, another time where we see some pretty significant dips in markets is Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. Next to that would be, Mercury retrogrades. Can mean that literally, the analysts or the economists are talking about something going in an alternate direction. So we've got 3 of these things that are happening. So for anybody to tell you that it's about to be like super expansive and like really amazing and everything's going to be really good because Venus is trining Jupiter this week or Mercury is trining Jupiter this week is like high, because I personally can't see it. We've already seen it in this last week. Like Russia was talking about trying to do business with the United States again, and now they're talking about how they're willing to do business in dollars. And what did we see? Gold and silver broke down. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to stay like that forever, but currency and anything that deals with global money is Venus in Pisces. And so we will see throughout this next month when Mercury retrogrades, it will conjunct Venus. That means that nations will renegotiate their trade deals, whether that's what they're willing to trade, whether that's going to be tariffs, whether that's going to be if they're willing to use US dollars, if they're going to be, kind of willing to go back into certain partnerships. And I think that will definitely have an impact on metals for sure. Earth minerals, right, is very much Taurus. So watching all these things going on with Aquarius coming into a square with Uranus means that these updates in technology, things that are going on with AI, with blockchain, with cryptocurrency, is about to just totally speed up and start totally kicking the behind of traditional banking, right? Bonds, anything that deals with central banks, anything that deals with, regular banks, all that stuff. We're all going in a new direction. And so you're going to start to see that there will be certain stocks and certain, investments that will just skyrocket. You're going to see other things that are going to break down. Very similar to the eclipses we saw in 2008, very similar to what we saw during the dot-com era. So there's a lot of speculative stuff right now. We don't really know what it's going to be, but I'm going to tell you guys, you're going to see a lot of volatility because there's 3 of the aspects that I see when the markets start to kind of change signs. Now this solar eclipse comes in. We've also got Venus conjunct the North Node. That is the saving grace. I think having Venus conjunct the North Node, although it's at an 8, right? This is the same degree that Mercury will retrograde back to, by the way. And I think I read to you guys, I think that was the one about the gremlins, right? I think so. Hold on a second. Let me just double check here. But the fact that Mercury is going to retrograde back to where Venus is meeting with the North Node is like another indication that's like a lot of things are about to change with money, Pisces globally, and then with the systems, Uranus and Taurus. So Pisces 8, which would be Pisces 9. A jockey going for broke. Oh no, this isn't the gremlins. I take that back. I think that was the 23. So Pisces 9, a jockey, keyword is practice, going for broke. The symbol speaks to requirements that an individual throw himself into life, hone his skills and talents, and make every effort his best if he wishes to stand in the winner's circle. The image of a jockey at a competition emphasizes competition and maneuvering for position or advantage. The implication here is that the individual who sloths off or fails to give it his best shot will lose in the long run. At its highest, it represents persistence, tenacity, and remarkable gift for coming from behind to win the game of life. Or watch for foolish risk-taking and love of gambling. The accent is on competition and skill, being able to maneuver yourself into the best position to get what you want. Here's a fun fact. This is happening conjunct Bondi's Saturn, her natal Saturn in Pisces. And the dispositor of her Saturn is Jupiter, which is at 29 degrees of Gemini. So there's something going on revolving around her position, her being in favor of things, like it or not. I think that there's going to be some big stuff that's maybe kind of coming up for calls in terms of women and a woman who's involved in a private kind of 4-letter agency. That's very kind of Pisces. Pluto could be too. That's definitely that. But I think there's going to be something going on here. In our lives, though, Venus conjunct the North Node does foretell that there's fateful relationships coming in. There is destined things happening with who we're meeting, when we're connecting, who we're working with, what we're buying, what we're consuming, what we value. And so Venus conjunct the North Node can make a lot of people crave more. So it can be like, I want more of this. And things that can sometimes feel unobtainable, Pisces. Influenced by Jupiter, Jupiter's retrograde. So it means that there's a lot of people who are actually going to get, I think, a long way tapping into visions, vision boards, meditation, prayer, reflection, anything like that. And also practicing gratitude, praying for humanity, sometimes helping those who are in need, recognizing and realizing that the way that we gain more is not necessarily through more things. It's going to be through being generous and helping other people and being willing to have necessary sacrifices if that's actually going to be helping and healing other people emotionally, physically, and financially. So some of you guys, especially if you have anything around that 7, 8, 9 degrees of Pisces or the water signs, it might be a really significant kind of period for you where there's something really future-oriented that's kind of changing. I think like the daily vibe, you know, with Tuesdays, it's basically just saying, look, the eclipse comes in. It's going to reset our vision when it comes to freedom and community. It's shaking out the norms. And you will see this unfold over the next like 6 to 18 months. Moon coming into Pisces after that. So that's going to be shortly after the eclipse. So most of the day will actually be in Pisces from 9 a.m. on. And as the moon is coming into Pisces, then we're kind of focusing more on emotional depth. And then you're going to see it come into conjunction with Venus. So if this were me, and this is what I'm planning on doing with these transits, is I'm going to do all of my intention work around midday on the 17th. Because now the moon has come out of Aquarius, the sun is no longer making a square to Uranus, the moon is being influenced by Jupiter, which is going to bring visions into abundance, and it's going to conjunct Venus. So literally I would say, excuse me, I take that back, it's in the evening hours, so it's going to be Tuesday evening. So, you know, any time after the eclipse. So really, I would say from 5 p.m. on. And then overnight, you're going to see the moon coming into conjunction with Venus. And we're going to actually wake up on the 18th, and you're going to see that Venus and the moon and Mercury are going to still kind of be conjunct. So dealing still with Tuesday, I think a lot of this is about really focusing on compassionate vibes, recognizing that things are shaking out. Things are more destiny driven. So if you want to, I would say going into Wednesday, set intentions for innovation, release outdated groups. Yes, there can be changes with friends. Certainly with the sun square Uranus as a part of the solar eclipse week, we're going to see issues with internet. We're going to see issues with power outages. I already told you guys, I think a week ago, I was like, money's being on exchanges. We're going to see issues with some kind of crypto exchange because Uranus and Taurus is about like, you know, digital money and then people's access or like collective access coming into a square with Uranus. We saw issues this week with Coinbase. I guess there were people who couldn't get their money on or off of exchanges, and like Coinbase was having issues. Expect to see more of these things around the time of the eclipse. That can definitely be a theme. And set intentions that are going to be about kind of leaning into some of the intuitive pulls in relationships for soul-aligned growth. Calling in that person you're supposed to be with or be working with or healing to an existing relationship is definitely key. So then this takes us to Wednesday, which will be the 18th. Great day. It's after the eclipse. We're going to see that the moon in Pisces is still picking up the energy of Jupiter in Cancer, so it's emotional and intuitive. And Pisces is a little bit more reflective. Certainly people want to check out when we have planets in Pisces, but like Saturn and Neptune aren't there anymore. So there's no bed to run and hide under. Like you're not going to be feeling that sense of like that gravity that's kind of holding you back. There's no invisible walls any longer. Now the walls are within ourselves, right? So as we start to see the moon come into conjunction with Venus overnight and then Mercury, it's really aligning, healing, truth, intuition, emotional connection, sharing your feelings. Perhaps people are feeling very inspired to be a part of a cause or kind of want to help other people. That could definitely be a theme on the 18th. And Pisces deals with water events. So bridges, oceans, coastal cities, storms, flooding, all of that stuff. And I do think with some of the eclipse energy, but also the Saturn-Neptune stuff, we're going to start seeing some of these things. We're going to start seeing more extreme storms. I think we're going to start seeing that there could be a little bit more earthquakes or volcanic activity, or that there could potentially be some pretty dramatic weather events. Although the trines are making nice aspects, it would not surprise me if that's happening right around the time of the eclipse. Now we will see the moon trine Jupiter. So it's actually pretty sweet in the morning. Great for having heart-to-heart conversations with moon conjunct Mercury trine Jupiter. So this is a really good time if you need to have a sit-down conversation with somebody kind of late morning into midday on Wednesday, the 18th. And then that trine to Jupiter is great for communication and connection. And then the sun goes into Pisces. So now we're officially in Pisces season. So, that sun coming into Pisces is really infusing more of empathy, creativity. And the moon conjunct Mercury is sparking like this poetic ability to think and communicate and express yourself. And then it all trines to Jupiter, which is going to bring more of that kind of emotional kind of abundance. So the vibes on Wednesday are dreamy, intuitive, bountiful. I think to navigate Wednesday is number one, we're out of the eclipse energy. Even though we're between eclipses, in the beginning of March, we're going to have another one. But now it's like all systems go. So we may feel like now we're ready to dive into art, meditation, projects. We can express ourselves more freely. Just avoid overwhelm. I think with all these like water trines, people can be very almost like a sponge where they're absorbing everything. So set gentle boundaries so that you can feel a little bit more like in flow, and you can kind of be, kind of feeling like a little bit better protected as you're kind of creating and being a little bit more kind of like empathic. We'll see the moon continue to move through Pisces. It'll come into that conjunction with Mercury around 5 p.m. Central. And it's also still in a trine. We start to lose it going into the evening. So this will bring us into February 19th. That's Friday. And first thing in the morning, the moon is coming out of Pisces. It's in the late degrees. And before it does, it's going to come into a sextile with Uranus. Okay, so we might start to see things becoming unveiled, but there's going to be some dramatic changes with money, bank, finance related things, values, global events. And we're also going to be seeing the moon segue into Aries. So this is a really interesting day because we've got this like kind of vibing out, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we get to Thursday and then the moon's going to leave Pisces and it's going to come into Aries, now coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So this is the closest of the conjunction. It's not conjunct till the 20th. So the last aspect you'll get is the sextile to Uranus. And then you're going to see it go into Aries here around 2 o'clock p.m. on the 19th. Pay attention. 0 degrees, 0 degrees, 0 degrees. So all these planets at 0 degrees are saying something is being initiated, which we already know is going to happen with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We already knew because of the solar eclipse. These are all new cycles. But it's all now playing off of Mars, which is in Aquarius. And, something I haven't mentioned, but I should have mentioned, is that Saturn is in a Martian sign. Mars is in a Saturnian sign. Traditionally, they have mutual reception. So even though they're not making an aspect to each other that's traditional, they're both saying the same thing. It's basically saying that if groups and society want to move ahead into the future and they want to create change, then individuals, Saturn in Aries, need to step up. They need to become aware of their abilities, their power. They need to also be more assertive. They need to be direct. They need to believe in themselves, and they need to learn how to do things on their own. So when the moon crosses Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees, we could see some pretty significant things happening around the world. And I think that with Mars in Aquarius at 21, global things, global law, global protests, global conversations about what's kind of going on with philosophy, religion, culture. It can also mean that we're starting to see people who are now talking out more about what's going on with Aries things, military, war, that kind of stuff. And Mars is in Aquarius, so it's in a sign that deals with things that are Uranian. They can kind of happen very quickly or, out of nowhere, and things that can kind of speed up in some way. So the 0 degree point, which is interesting, I was looking at this and I haven't looked at it in a while, but when Nicola was talking about 0 degrees, he talks about how it's the most potent degree and that it's like the initiatory degree and it's when something begins. And so let me read to you what he has to say about that 0 degree Aries point. All right, so 0 degrees of Aries possesses the basic symbolism of the Aries sign: combat, war, to construct, to build, to demolish, to produce, fighting spirit, action, diligent, and bravery. I think we're going to see a bunch of veterans who are now obviously out of the service that are going to start being like, we're getting involved. We're running for political positions, or we're going to start to see a lot of more activity in regards to people who are going to be out patrolling and protecting citizens. I've seen that on social media in parts of Europe where there's groups of men that are now going around and they're not doing anything. They're just keeping an eye on the subways. They're keeping an eye on the corners. They're making sure people can get their groceries. They're wanting to ensure that their communities are protected. And a lot of that's also kind of connected to the Uranus energy where they're seeing there's been a lot of destabilizing things that have been going on where they live. And also it's going to be like this call to people on the internet, Mars, and saying, who wants to get involved? Who wants to start helping? I'm just one person, but how can we all actually start to kind of create a difference? And it's just been really interesting to start seeing people really fine-tuning into this energy. Right now, individuals don't know how to create change. They just know that things need to change. And I spoke about this in my Saturn Neptune video. I was like, you're going to start seeing people who are going to be basically being like, we're going to have citizen arrests, like we're going to start taking matters into our own hands, and not in a negative way, not in a combative way. This is not me saying anything about people being violent, but people being like, if people who are in positions of power, who are supposed to be leading, are not here, especially because Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is like an emperor has no clothes moment, they're going to go, we're going to show up and we're going to do it. We're going to enforce the rules of law. Only problem is we've got generations of kids and also individuals that don't know their rights. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know anything that's connected to their personal freedoms. And now they're having to figure out how to defend themselves. So there's going to be lots of connections, I think, to people in legal fields, because it's at 21. People who may be, talking about, protecting people's like civil rights and their freedoms when it comes to communication and connection. And then we're going to start seeing groups that are going to be kind of banding together. But something could happen on the 19th, right? We don't just see something happen just because a planet enters into a sign, but to see all three of these planets, the moon influenced by Jupiter, which is retrograde, Saturn, which is being influenced by Pluto, as well as Uranus, so it's talking about politics, groups, and money. And then Neptune, which is talking about anything with Pisces, which is going to be more about hidden places, things that are kind of international or behind the scenes, are all about to reset. All of these things. And we don't know where we're going yet. We just know that there's going to be a change. So we'll see that really potent 0 degree point. The only way to begin is to begin. That's the Sabian symbol. And when it goes into Aries, watch what happens on the afternoon of the 19th. Something may start kicking up. And then the moon continues to keep moving. It'll come into a sextile with Pluto, which is going to be really prominent in the PM hours. And then we are going to see it continue to move on. Now, there's no major aspects that are actually happening on Thursday. But even though there's no major aspects, to me, that's a pretty big deal because Saturn and Neptune are about as close as they're going to get to a conjunction. They'll conjunct the very next day. Look at it like this. When the moon's in Pisces earlier in the day and it's coming into a sextile with Uranus, so in like the late morning, it's bringing intuitive flashes. It's like, I have a feeling this is what's going to happen. And Uranus and Taurus is the banks with money, with resources, with food. And then we're going to see it slide into Aries, and it's going to be about this energized action. Conjuncting Saturn and Neptune, where we're blending, obviously, dreams with discipline. And then it's sextiles Pluto, where it's about empowering transformations within the collective. So how to navigate Thursday, even though there's nothing serious going on, I think this is act on sudden insights. If you have an intuitive feeling that you're like, this thing's going to happen, I got to do this to prepare, or I got to do this, to kind of make sure I have all my ducks in a row, building structure and security and self-support through your intuition, through your personal visions. This is also about balancing boldness with realism and like realizing that you have to manifest and you have to do it powerfully, but we're not in the age of Pisces anymore. All these people that you're watching on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, who are just telling you, just sit there and meditate, everything will come to you, are bullshit. Long gone are the days of that. We're not going to see that anymore. Now it's going to be, you want something, go get it. You have an idea, put the pen to paper, start something, initiate something. But here's the deal. Many of us are so overwhelmed because we feel like we can't do this alone. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. So you got to make lemonade and kind of tap on some of the sextiles that are coming up to Pluto. Power is going to be determined based off of your standing in community and what you contribute to communities, how you are helping people, what you bring to the table. If you are not able to do those things, if you're not able to contribute, then you're going to have to figure out skills and tools and ways that you can and be a part of organizations and networks. That's where the support is going to be. The rules are now changing, guys. So if you are not willing to collectively figure out how you can kind of assist other people and how you could build these networks, from referring to supporting to bartering to trading to teaching, right? All of that stuff, then some people will get left behind. However, this is that potent moment where you're going to go, this is what I'm going to start doing. And I do think that if we act on some of these sudden insights, it is planting that seed, which we will see kind of unfold over the better part of the next 36 years. That's every single time we see Saturn and Neptune conjunct, it's roughly about every 36 years. So I think that this is going to be the day to watch. We watch the moon that keeps moving through, and it goes into February 20th. Now, this is the big day. This is the day that I've been waiting for when Saturn and Neptune conjunct. So it will be first thing in the morning. It looks like right around 7 a.m.-ish Central Time. Saturn and Neptune are exactly conjunct at 0 degrees, 44 minutes. Mars is at 22. Now it's at a Capricorn degree, which is talking about probably some of the all-out conflicts and brawls and things that are happening within society. Unfortunately, once again, protests, but things that are going on where lots of groups are speaking up about what's going on with politics, and they're not going to show you this on the daily news, but get on social media where you can see independent media and see what's going on in other countries. People are in the freaking streets. You're seeing it in Japan. You're seeing it in Iran and parts of the Middle East. You're seeing this in Argentina. You're seeing this literally all over the place. But just because you're not seeing it where you live does not mean it's not happening. And that's why I think it's important for people to start realizing that it's not about what's happening in their everyday world, because if we're blind to it, we're not going to see it coming when it comes our way. So the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is prominent not just because we see that it's going to be this new marker for 36 years, but the moon is going through there too. So all of this is being influenced by Mars. Mars is also simultaneously coming into a square with Uranus, pushing for this change or evolution when it comes to values, food, systems, and security. Similar squares that we saw with the solar eclipse. So now I think really what we're kind of looking at with some of these aspects, and the moon is still kind of moving away from the sextile with Pluto, but it's there. It's basically saying, you know what, it's really time to dissolve old limits and things that have not worked. And Saturn can be about top-down structures. This is what I said to you guys, you were going to see with all the squares to Uranus this week, that you're going to see a bunch of heads. Uranus is conjunct Algol. A bunch of people calling for people in big companies to step down. So you're seeing it. Heads of banks, big companies, big business, people in the royal family. All these people are stepping down because there's so much public outcry. I genuinely believe that this has been a test, that the things that have come out over the last couple of weeks have been a test for society to see if whether or not we were going to rebel, push against, we were going to, make a big deal. We were going to call for there to be truth and disclosure, and also if they were going to do something or if we were going to stay asleep. And I cannot say this enough. Don't stop. You guys have to keep sharing and expanding and telling other people what's going on. We can't normalize this, because if we do that, we are sleepwalking right into what is going to be some very, very, very testy times. Now, when Saturn and Neptune conjunct, because Mars is at 22 degrees, which is that Capricorn degree, so we know it deals with governments and we know it deals with long-standing people in positions of power. And I think I read to you guys the 22 degrees. It's a child sitting on the floor. So it talks about making the best of the situation, basically, the best that you can. Now, Mars is starting to come into a sextile with Chiron. So it's saying that individuals can feel less afraid, scorned, isolated, rejected, or lonely if they feel like they're aligning with the right people who are actually pushing for change or pushing for freedom. So it's actually going to help connect, I think, a lot of lonely people who have been seeking their tribe. But that sextile, I think, that you're going to start seeing, you're going to start seeing to Mars, it'll come a little bit later. Let's look at this. Is going to be positive, because I think it's going to allow us to really focus on taking action with the right people. Now, the moon will come out of a sextile with Pluto, and then it's going to come into a square with Jupiter in Cancer at 15 degrees. That'll be around 4 p.m. So that's saying that there's the potential for there to be some very heated kind of conflicts that could be happening, where individuals are feeling stressed to make changes when it comes to their home, their families, or their living situations. 15 degrees deals with movement or transportation or communications and kind of talking to people. And this can make people feel very overly emotional or emotionally kind of reactionary, because Aries is like me, and then Cancer is like family and like other people that kind of like rely on us. That's going to be a little challenging. If you have anything like 14, 15, 16 degrees of the cardinal signs, keep an eye on your chart, because there's going to be some circumstances that are going to come up on this day that's going to make you go, something has to change. And the moon's also influencing Jupiter. Now, I think that this day feels ambitious, but it feels illusionary, because these planets are sitting at 0 degrees. Passionate pushes, not knowing quite where we're going yet. So to navigate the 20th, you need to realize that there are still things that have to unfold. We have to get Saturn and Neptune forward. We have to get out of the eclipses in March. We have to get out of the Mercury retrograde. But some of us are starting to wake up and realizing instinctively that they need to take action. So it's good for pursuing dreams in a practical sense. I would avoid overcommitment and also any emotional entanglements, I think, on Friday. use your energy for initiatives that are really blending vision with action. And if you're wanting to see the blossoming or the beginning of this solar eclipse, now you're going to start to see it because we're out of the Uranus square and we have gone through the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And it will take years to see the effects of this start to manifest. But I think the events taking place this week are what's going to kind of kick it off. So we keep going. We've got moon that's going to keep moving through Aries into what's going to be Saturday the 21st. And when we wake up, we have the moon conjunct Chiron in Aries. Allergies, head injuries, bumping your head, migraines, anything that deals with head and face and sinuses, you got to watch those things. And obviously heated emotions, where emotions are bringing up emotional kind of wounds. And then you will see that the moon is also in a slight sextile with Mars in Aquarius. So it's very early in the morning. Maybe some of you guys aren't going to be picking up on that exactly. And then the moon's going to keep moving and then it'll eventually go into Taurus. And so when it's in Aries, it's more about socializing and connecting and the people. And then when it goes into Taurus, it's more about resting, hanging out, good food, good wine, feeling like we're getting in touch with our, sensual nature. And it's a definite vibe shift on Saturday night. The one thing that you're going to want to watch is as soon as the moon goes into Taurus, now it's finally really highlighting the beauty of this Venus in Pisces. So the illusion, the kind of tapping into the ethereal healing kind of energies in the waters and the soaking, and Pisces can also be very emotional. It can be people being very emotional about some of the changes that are going on. And I've heard so many people like over the last 2 weeks that have just been like breaking down in tears, being like, it's so hard. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I'm like, you got to do it. You have to. There's no other choice, and I feel like I'm having to tap into that Saturn Neptune energy for people being like, it's hard, have your moment, get it out of your system. And then like, let's get the show on the road, and unfortunately that's just kind of like what that Aries energy is like. Now, in spite of the really nice Venus and the fact that Venus is coming into a trine with Jupiter and the moon is in Taurus, the moon's got to get past Pluto. And this is Saturday, but when the moon goes through Taurus, it's about money, resources, banking, and spending. So I think about how the moon's going to start coming into a square with Pluto. And that's going to be happening overnight into the 22nd, but you might feel some of the pressure Saturday night of just some of the emotional tension and some of like the discord that's going on about collective friends and, social connections and like financial kind of endeavors, and no major transits that are going to be happening on Saturday. So, I kind of feel like that moon conjunct Chiron right when we wake up first thing in the morning, thankfully it's going to be very early. So some of you guys may not have it, but if you have anything around like that 22 to 24 degrees of Aries or the cardinal signs, events can be coming up that's dealing with having to heal something. Healing identity wounds has been a lot of it. And then as it ingresses into Taurus, things are going to ground out a little bit, but we're going to start to feel that square to Pluto that's going to be happening in the evening hours. And so we can see some power struggles. The nice thing is that the moon will be sextile the sun. So now this is like the first nice aspect that we've seen since the solar eclipse. And things in theory are supposed to kind of stabilize here. And there's more ease and kind of compassionate flow with stability, right? Moon and Taurus. So it can feel like, especially in the evening, things are a little bit more transformative. They're a little bit more soothing. Things are a little bit more grounded. But I do think we're going to still hear some rumblings of some financial drama happening over the weekend. And I think to navigate Saturday, this is really about focusing on addressing vulnerabilities gently, especially in the morning. Seek security in routines. And I also think this is about kind of transforming tension into what can feel more like empowered stability now that that moon is starting to kind of come into a square with Pluto. Now on the 22nd, this is Sunday, so we're going to wake up next Sunday. I mean, the best day all day, right? And so it's almost like we're working all week just to get to Sunday. So keep reminding yourself or plan something nice on Sunday. Spa day, go and get a massage, go and plan a picnic outside, go and, maybe take a cooking class or do something very Taurus-like, or just plan on indulging a little bit, because this is where we really start to see things kind of ease up. That's because we're going to see the moon coming into a sextile with Venus, which is exalted, and also with Mercury. So I especially like anything that's like health spas or anything that's connected to soaks, saunas, IVs, foot reflexology, aromatherapy, facials. That kind of stuff would be really good with some of these sextiles.
And really what you guys are going to find is this is the best day because we've got exalted moon, exalted Jupiter, exalted Venus, and they're going ding, ding. They're all sextiling each other. So we've got like a bisextile here. And then Venus comes into a trine with Jupiter, which will also be happening throughout the day. So honestly, I feel like the 22nd is more of like a Valentine's Day than what we had on Valentine's. This doesn't really feel like Valentine's type transits with Saturn kind of going into Aries in the conjunction with Neptune personally. But I love this day because the Venus, in Pisces trine Jupiter in Cancer. P.S. We're not going to get another one of these, okay, for 12 years because Jupiter only goes through Cancer once every 12 years and Venus only goes through Pisces unless there's a retrograde once a year. So this is hands down, I think, the treat at the end of what feels like a very, very big week. Can this mean going into next week that things can be better with the markets, that we can see something improve? Perhaps. I mean, I still hold true with what I told you guys that, the Mercury retrograde, the Mercury conjunct Venus, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, there are some things that make me feel like there can be a pop that we can see going into next week. But I think we're going to see some stuff that's going to pretty dramatically change in March and April. Now, what is the Venus trine? I mean, Venus is also influencing by Uranus. So that means that we may see some people that are like, yeah, world's going crazy, stuff's breaking down, crypto's doing good, right? Or people who are involved in some metals, they may see, or some physical goods, they may see a pop. But Venus and Jupiter are benefic. So to see them trine each other like this, which is not often, we only get this trine generally once every 12 years, it's about kind of Venus, and Jupiter showering us with love and abundance. Moon sextiles Venus, which is very sensual, and it's about intuitive harmony. We also see that the moon is sextiling Jupiter, so it's going to be about, I think, feeling solid and secure and stable and kind of indulging. So very romantic, very generous, very grounding. And this is really about indulging in pleasure. This is about nurturing relationships and kind of attracting abundance through heartfelt kind of stable actions and connections. So I don't know, this might be a better day to do like your Valentine's Day thing. So if you missed it, definitely push it back to next Sunday, okay? Now I want to show you guys where the Mercury-Jupiter trine is going to be taking place this week. And obviously I'm going to be looking at this under the lens of Placidus housing system, whole sign housing system. I was thinking Placidus in my mind. I personally use Placidus housing system. So I'll show it to you guys whole sign, but if you guys do use Placidus, then I recommend looking at where about 15 degrees of Pisces and Cancer are in your chart. And that's where you're going to be able to see where this trine is kind of taking place. And as usual, because this is impacting my Mercury ruled charts, my Jupiter ruled charts, my Cancers, Virgo and Gemini, obviously Cancer, and then Pisces and Sag, you guys are all going to be the most impacted by this. And those of you guys have anything 14, 15, 16 degrees, I would say, of the water sign. So see if you have any planets there, especially if you have anything in Scorpio, you're really going to be feeling all that go poof and kind of blow up, okay, in a good way. So listen for your rising sign to see where this trine is taking place. And then you can also listen to your sun sign. The rising sign is going to tell you what's going to happen. The sun sign is more about kind of your energy, your creativity, maybe in your identity or your career. And the moon sign is good too because we see some kind of lunar aspects that are happening. So listen to your moon sign as well. And I'm going to start with my Aries and my Aries risings first. So for you guys, you're going to see Mercury and Pisces in your 12th, trining Jupiter and Cancer in your 4th, okay? So this basically means that, once again, big picture, right? It's going to take between now and the beginning of April to see the full manifestation of this. So we've got Mercury in your 12th house, subconscious, hidden behind the scenes, Jupiter in your 4th house, which is going to be touching more on what's going on with you at home emotionally and kind of with family or the past. So I'm predicting there's a lot of intuitive insights that are going to come up for you in a dream, in meditation, maybe when you're soaking, when you're in the shower, that is really healing subconscious patterns tied to family roots. Venus is there too. So, definitely spas, soaking, massage, anything that's going to be about healing the heart space can be really good. Ancestor work can be really good. And I do think for a lot of you guys that this is tied to your ancestral patterning. And it can be health issues, it could be substance issues, it could be psychological stuff that's kind of getting healed. And there can be a lot of dreamy revelations. There could be a lot of emotional home upgrades. I would really recommend you guys to be just meditating on your own inner security right now. I think that would really help. Journal about some of your, relationships to ancestors. You can set up an ancestral altar. You can do some like meditation or prayer work. Really maximize this transit by using solitude for spiritual growth, okay? Not just icing yourself out and kind of binging and watching TV or drinking. Do something productive with your time, and watch for that connection that you have to source that's going to kind of help guide you when it comes to making changes either with your emotions or your home or your family situations. Good luck. Taurus risings, you guys are going to see that there will be a Mercury-Jupiter trine. So you've got Mercury moving through Pisces in your house of friendships, goals, communities, and networks, trining Jupiter in your third house, which is going to be dealing with travel, learning, communication, writing, sharing. These trines are wonderful for you, Taurus. I mean, I think that, with these two houses that are kind of getting hit, it means that it's helping you connect, I think, to your friends, your community. It's improving communication. It can allow you to connect with siblings better. You could be traveling, and just a lot of good expansive flow that can be happening in groups. And I think, you might see that you're nurturing, a family relationship or a sibling relationship, traveling with friends, giving presentations online, just lots of lucky networking opportunities and community abundance. So share your vision socially. Venus is a part of this. Your chart ruler is going to be going through a trine also to Jupiter as well. And it's really about kind of sharing your visions with, I think, your friends, or like doing it in a social way. So networking can be good. I would just say that this may be best for some of you guys to host some kind of gathering or group. So it could mean that you're hosting a meditation group, or you're doing something online, or you're throwing a party. This is a good time to make the announcement and tell people what you're actually getting ready to put out, even if it may feel like a process throughout the next couple of months. And very strong if you're trying to kind of get more recognition from also like people online. So if you have like an audience, right? Especially if you have like a Substack, or if you have a newsletter, if you have a website or media, you can be announcing that you're going to be having like meetups, or there's going to be some kind of groups, and you can share even more of your work. Okay. Good luck, Taurus. I hope it's a good one for you. All right, for Gemini and Gemini rising, you guys are going to see that you're a main player in this. Obviously, Mercury is moving through your 10th house of career and reputation. So you're kind of out in the world and you're being seen. And it also is connected to you personally through your ascendant and your home, your family, or your kind of private life. So as it's going through the 10th house, it's coming into a trine with Jupiter in Cancer in your second house. And this is all about boosting maybe your career through communication. It can also mean that there's a huge value shift that's happening, or a renegotiation with money or with work. And I think this is about being more imaginative when it comes to your public image, and also emotional security, how you feel about what you're doing, how you feel about the money that you're making. I predict for a lot of you guys that there is going to be some professional luck that will come with this, potentially, kind of navigating financial situations more intuitively. I believe you'll see over the next 2 months with this that you might be changing jobs, pitching big ideas, really trusting your gut when it comes to your worth. And to maximize, I think, this transit, really align your work with what feels right. All right, we've got next Cancer and Cancer rising. So you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury going through the sign of Pisces, fellow sister water sign, in your 9th, trining Jupiter in your 1st house. So this is pretty lucky for you, Cancer. Jupiter rules your health. It also rules scheduling, habits, pets, and work. And Mercury is obviously in the 9th house, which is about, traveling, higher education. It also is very much connected to your personal beliefs. And as it's trining Jupiter, it means that it's going to be really helping you expand the beliefs within yourself. Now, I think the themes that will come with this are going to be intuitive wisdom, kind of helping shape your philosophy or your identity, opportunities for travel, opportunities for connecting with a mentor, for connecting with a different belief system. It can even be for like traveling and having epiphanies about traveling or your beliefs, and just some kind of self-growth. Now, this will be a process. You'll see this unfold over the next 2 months or so. So I think a lot of you guys would really benefit from studying spirituality, embracing vulnerability. Maybe it means that you're teaching from experience when it comes to either your career or, your health or your habits. And I think there's just going to be just a lot more positive thinking that's going to be coming through this. And you're a lot more positive about okay, where am I going with my life, right? Especially as you're kind of going through some of these Saturn-Neptune transits, which can be very much about a new identity out in the world professionally. And if you're working with a spiritual practice or a mentor, it can kind of really help you navigate through this time. Good luck. For my Leos and Leo risings, you guys are going to see Mercury moving through Pisces in your 8th house, trining Jupiter in Cancer in your 12th. As with all the fire signs, this is a little bit more emotional, sensitive, therapeutic. It's not as action-based as I know you guys want it to be, but it's still important nevertheless. Now, with Mercury in your 8th house trining Jupiter in your 12th, this is really delving into intimacy and the subconscious, right? The 8th and the 12th house. And really what this is going to be showing you is emotional depths that are revealing hidden abundance. Now, I predict for you guys that it's going to be about transformative healing, psychic bonds. Maybe this is about exploring shared resources, releasing fears, especially if it's changes with intimacy, joint finances, or anything connected to home. This is also about really maybe tapping into 8th or 12th house things. So this could be, saying for you, especially over the next month, reflecting on a soul level, looking at joint finances, focusing on intimacy. Maybe this is going to be touching on things that are connected to partners, money, taxes, investments, inheritance, and where it can be bringing you some hidden blessings. And also like the financial support that allows you to either heal or work or be creative behind the scenes. Now, some of you guys might be tapping into therapy. Some of you guys might be tapping on to like rituals for release. I think this can be really good, especially for any like necessary emotional healing, okay? Good luck. And also money stuff too. Mercury represents your money. So it might be that somebody else's loss is your gain. So I don't know what that's coming from, but you guys might see some lucky breaks financially. All right, Virgo and Virgo rising. This is big for you guys as Mercury is your chart ruler. It's in your opposite sign Pisces in your 7th house of relationships. And it is trining Jupiter, which is your 7th house ruler. So whether you're single or you're in a relationship, to me, this really speaks to lots of good things that are going to start happening in relationships. Single Virgo and Virgo risings, I would say, this is about saying yes to invitations, going to other people's parties, gatherings, and get-togethers because you might meet someone. It's also talking about family gatherings or changes at home that can be kind of discussed when it comes to existing relationships. And you guys are going to see this several times. So it can be a really prominent turning point when it comes to your relationships with other people. Now, it's harmonizing partnerships and goals. So it's about, I think, compassionate relations that are meeting more expansive dreams, fated alliances, group luck with friends, being at the right place at the right time, communicating with other people more empathically, and maybe networking intuitively, and being able to connect and collaborate with other people. And if you're in like a business where you have clients, or if you have like something that you sell, this is your marketplace. So it can actually mean that you're bringing in a lot more people, or there's like a lot more kind of stability going on with clients or people who are kind of coming in for business. I really like this for Virgo and Virgo risings. And I'll just remind you guys, Mercury retrograde means that there can be a slip swap, in relationship land. You're also going to see that there's going to be an eclipse in your sign here at the beginning of March. And so it is really highlighting where you need other people more now. And whether that's a therapist, an astrologer, a spouse, a best friend, learning to lean on other people throughout these periods look like it's going to be really important between now and April. Okay? Good luck, guys. Libra and Libra rising, you guys are going to see Mercury moving through the sign of Pisces in your natal 6th house, and it's going to trine Jupiter in Cancer in your natal 10th. And as with all of the air signs, you guys are going to see this is very much work, money, kind of like routine related. So you're going to see that Libra, the 6th house obviously deals with your health, your habits, your schedule, your pets. It also deals with your habits. So bad habits, good habits, all that stuff. And you're one of the signs, you and Taurus are going to see that Venus will make the same trine. Okay, so it's going to be happening in the same week. So you may see that some of the things that you're tapping into, that you're communicating or kind of changing or getting it into alignment, is actually going to be better for you come the end of the week, and it'll be something that feels better. Now, Libra, the 10th house deals more with your career, your reputation, your professional life. So when we see that Jupiter rules communication, it looks like there's going to be a change in either your schedule or the way that you kind of communicate at work. This is really tying your health routines to your career. So it can mean there's intuitive work that's kind of taking place that's really kind of flowing and nurturing your public image. You can see that you're healing something, you're healing relationships to work, you're providing a lot more abundant service. And this is really about, I think, just balancing wellness and what you have to kind of get done. Maybe trusting your instincts at work and also feeling like you're either mentoring or healing through your profession in some way. And so remember that, Mercury is going to retrograde here. And I think a lot of what the 6th house teaches us is that we have to get ourselves in order before we can really serve others. And whether that's the 7th house in relationships or clients or the 10th house in terms of being able to be at work. So I do think that there can be some bright ideas that can come up. Mercury is about kind of things that are hidden or stuff that's been kind of in the background that you're now wanting to kind of integrate into your daily routine to improve something about your work or your career. So you might be going back to old projects over the next 2 months or getting creative with ways to really make more of a difference or kind of grow in a professional way. Good luck, Libra. Scorpio rising. You guys are being blessed with quite a few water trines. You are obviously the missing piece of the puzzle. So if you have anything, I would say 14, 15, 16 degrees of Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising, you're going to be experiencing a grand water trine, which is really great. Very emotional, very intuitive. Now, Mercury is moving through your 5th house of creativity, children, self-expression, having fun, taking risks. It's trining Jupiter in Cancer in your 9th house of travel, education, and beliefs. Obviously, Jupiter deals with money, and Mercury is going to be dealing with your networks, your goals, and also joint finances. So I think for a lot of you guys, it'll manifest in different ways. Like if you're doing something creative that's involving teaching or traveling or publishing, it could be that there's some good stuff happening in this department for you. It can also mean that there are some changes in your love life that's connected to travel or your beliefs about home and family. And I think a lot of Scorpio risings are really going to like this because it's sparking a lot of creativity, it's sparking a lot of adventure, and it's about kind of romantic intuition meeting kind of like, philosophical growth. So I'm predicting for Scorpio risings that there can be artistic breakthroughs, inspired opportunities for trips and traveling, obviously expressing more playfully and exploring your beliefs. And this is really about creating from the heart. So if you are focusing, I think, with this first trine and kind of tapping into that call to, I need to be, focusing on my hobbies. I need to be playing an instrument or writing. Watch for some of that stuff to kind of come in. It could be some new creative ways also of making money or kind of connecting in romantic relationships. Good luck, Scorpio. For Sag and Sag rising, this is an important transit for you guys as Mercury is going through Pisces in your house and home sector, trining Jupiter in Cancer, your chart ruler, retrograde in the 8th. So Mercury rules relationships and career. Mercury is hanging out in your 4th house right now, and some of you guys might feel like it's more home and family matters. For others, it might mean that you're getting ready to move or there's some shift going on in your home zone. But this is trining in water houses, so it's more empathic, intuitive, emotional, kind of healing. It's reflective too. And with Jupiter ruling your ascendant, this is personal to you. So Mercury in the 4th, where the mind and communication and the changes that are happening are at home, are starting to trine Jupiter in your house of other people's money. So think partners' money, taxes, inheritances, bonuses, investments. And this is really about, I think, deepening home and intimacy in your relationship to these things. So emotional foundations meet transformative abundance. I do predict for some of you guys there can be some good money stuff happening with property. We can also see family healing, inheritance luck can kind of come up. And it's really about nurturing your roots and facing the shadows because Jupiter is retrograde in your 8th house. And I've spoken to a lot of Sag risings who have said to me this year, they're like, well, I lost my job. I'm spending more time at home, and that's been Saturn and Neptune. But it's allowed me to reflect and kind of emotionally heal, even though money's been tight. I've heard others that have said, I lost my parents or a parent and I inherited property. And now I'm dealing with this property and trying to figure out if I want to rent it or if I want to sell it. And so you can see some of these things that can be happening depending on your chart. I do think that, it's really about, like I said, nurturing your roots, facing your shadows, maximize this by home rituals for security. So some of you guys might go I'm burning some sage, I'm washing the floors. Others might go, actually, it's going to be more about me investing more into my home and increasing the value. And maybe you're redoing the kitchen, or maybe you're going to be renovating something or putting in a pool. And you'll kind of be in this for like the next 2 months until we fully see, you know, the eclipse and like the Mercury retrograde done. And then things are going to start to kind of ease up for Sag risings as we're getting into April. But there's a lot of emotions you have to work through in terms of changes with home and also with finances this month. And I think it can be very therapeutic for you guys if you use it the right way. Good luck. All right, we've got my Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys are going to do Mercury in Pisces in your 3rd house, coming into a trine with Jupiter in Cancer in your 7th house, okay? I like this for you. It can be good for relationships, be good for traveling, good for writing. The 3rd house is going to be kind of connected to the mind. So anything that deals with writing, traveling, relocating, learning. It's also about siblings. It's about vehicles. And Mercury is directly connected to your 6th house of health and habits, as well as travel and beliefs. And it is trining Jupiter in your 7th house. So it's telling me whether it's enhancing communication with siblings or family, or enhancing travel and relationships, there's some kind of connection there. And I do think that this will really show you that the enhancement is actually kind of about, you know, not just communication, but partnerships. This will likely bring up for a lot of you guys intuitive talks and help you really nurture the relationships that you're currently in, or find somebody new. Now, I predict that there can be very meaningful kind of heart-to-heart conversations, dialogues with people that makes you feel like you're really growing in terms of how you're relating to each other. The key here is that you're really focusing on listening. Venus is receptive. And you'll see that there's going to be a lot of back and forth. They're either having in a relationship or relationships with a sibling, or back and forth with your partner about potentially talking about moving or traveling. And I would say share stories, go back and forth, and try to keep an open mind and see other people's perspectives. This is also a wonderful time to be writing or teaching or just focusing on journaling. I think that can be really beneficial for you guys as well. And obviously this will enhance, because you're going to see Mercury's tie to traveling, the concept and the idea of either discussing traveling or ceremonies. So if you're a Capricorn or Capricorn rising discussing getting married, it could be about when do we do it, how do we do it, where do we do it, and you're going to kind of get that sorted out basically through the next 2 months. Good luck. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you guys are going to see Mercury in Pisces in your natal 2nd house of money, resources, and stability, trining Jupiter in Cancer in your 6th house of health, work, and your daily habits. Mercury deals with other people's money. It's also connected to, taking risks and chances and romance and kids. And it's going to trine Jupiter. So I love this for you guys, because all the air signs, it's going to be more like work related. And this is definitely a period where there could be some good news coming in about pets, about work, about finances. Obviously, this is boosting your values and your routines as these two trine. So it's bringing more abundance when it comes to your self-worth. It's also about kind of intuitive health hacks, creating more financial flow, creating a lot more work luck. So if you're wanting to get into an office, change departments, get a new job, renegotiate a salary. And it's also really about the value of your intuition and really streamlining, I think, some of your habits through that trine with Jupiter, obviously in your 6th house. So your eating habits, your spending habits, your work habits. And I think that this is really teaching you, and you'll see this through the Mercury retrograde, that there's opportunities for you to be reevaluating your budget, or reassessing your budget, or reevaluating where you're working. And if you're willing to kind of renegotiate having a change to either your schedule or your job. But try to keep an eye on both of those things, and you'll see that play out for the better part of the next 2 months. And probably connecting with new, either working with friends or connecting with new groups of people. So it might be there's new people coming in your office space, or people who you're working with as well. And for my Pisces and Pisces risings, you guys are going to see this week both Venus and Mercury moving through your sign. That's going to trine Jupiter in Cancer, which is obviously your traditional ruler. So you have a lot of power this week, Pisces. Mercury obviously rules relationships and family. And it's going to be trining from your 1st house to your 5th, Jupiter. So this is saying you're getting in touch with, or you're telling people, or you're more aware of what you need to be creative, to have fun, to be able to focus on risk-taking chances in romance. It's almost like you're finally really getting into the flow of what's going to make me happy. And even though it'll take a little bit of time for this to unfold, I really think for a lot of you guys, this is going to be a beautiful transit. This empowers a lot of self-expression. It brings up a lot of creativity. It's wonderful for romance and for connecting with people. And it's really about your personal intuition meeting some kind of joyful kind of expansion and creative project. Now, I think a lot of you guys are just going to see this as kind of like this kind of charismatic kind of glow, more romance and more opportunities for abundance and having fun. You may find that you're just communicating in a more playful way, you're communicating in a more poetic way. Things feel a little bit more free, and this is really about you shining and being a little bit more authentic in who you are and what you're able to create. So the 5th house could be children, romantic partners, self-employment, hobbies. And so there is some sense of you telling other people either what you want, what's going to make you happy, or what it is that you want to participate in. And it can also be a lot of things that involve children, pregnancy. That can be some things that can be kind of taking place here as well, or just kind of getting in touch with your own kind of inner child or your own inner artist. I love that for you, Pisces. That's a great one. All right, guys. Well, this is quite the week. Like I said, probably hands down, at least when I sat down and I did like the year ahead, I remember being like, yep, that's going to be the week where everything's going to change, you know, in February. So you guys let me know. Leave me your feedback. Leave me your comments. What manifests? What are some of the things that we kind of saw this week that definitely plays out in the world? Make sure you're subscribed. Click that bell button below because I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So you can see more of these videos as they come out in real time. Like I said, check out that solar eclipse video if you guys want to see what's happening with the eclipse. And that's the weekly astro weather for February the 15th through the 22nd. Remember, guys, the cosmos are our ally in growth and magic this week. Don't kind of fear some of the changes. Stay connected, trust the flow. And obviously, I'll see you guys back here on Tuesday and Thursday. And I hope you guys enjoy the eclipses and some of the other transits that are taking place this week. It is going to be absolutely life-changing. So good luck, Godspeed, and I'll see you here very soon. Take care.